Call the meeting to order. Call the roll.
Trustee Healy. Trustee Katsinas. Trustee Milani.
Here.
Trustee Compass.
Here.
Trustee Reardon.
Here.
Trustee Renovations.
Here.
Mayor Pico.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the February 6, 2023 Committee of the Whole minutes.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Milani.
move to approve the minutes of the regular meeting of the Committee of the Whole of February 6, 2023. Second.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any questions or comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Milani.
Aye.
Trustee Renovations.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
2023 Playground Renovations, Purchase, and Installation.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Reardon.
I move to recommend to the village board to approve the use of HGAC by co-op contract PR 11-20 and recommend the village board to approve the proposal from Landscape Structures entitled Orland Park Playground Renovations 2023 for the purchase and installation of playground equipment and associated site work for the amount not to exceed $997,075.50 plus 2% contingency of $19,550.50, and move to recommend authorizing the village manager to execute all related contracts subject to village attorney review.
Second.
Do we have a presentation on this?
I do have one slide if you can, if you want to see the locations of the parks.
And one thing I just want to ask, I want to make sure, so this was unanimously approved by the Rec Advisory Board, and they also made some changes as well, didn't they?
Yes,
Based on
they did.
input that they received from the,
They did.
residents. Okay, great.
I just have on the slide here, you can see the blue is the new parks, the green are the parks that we have already completed throughout the village. The 6 parks are located, and there's one further a little bit south. So if you want to scroll down a little bit, they can, two other ones. But yes, it was approved by the Rec Advisory Board with some minor changes based on input from the residents.
That's great. And can you make sure that Bonnie gets those 2 slides, because I'll use them in the State of the Village to show people. As you're aware, we hear frequently from each side of town how they never get anything and the other side does. So this will show that it's really spread throughout the village, that we try and do things based on the condition of the various play equipment. Is there any questions from the board? So my one other comment, and this is for the public, is that we've had public meetings on this. We went out with a survey on this as well and got input on this, and the board's making these decisions tonight. We're not going back to this next year after this is done. We've had these for a reason, and again, got a lot of input from the Rec Advisory Board and obviously input from the board, but once we make this decision, it's, these are going to get redone, and that's not going to be exactly the same as what you had before. Call the roll.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Milani.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Renovations. Mayor Pico.
Aye.
2023 Neighborhood Road Improvement Program Proposal Award.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
I move to recommend to the village board to approve the proposal for RFP 23-019 2023 Neighborhood Road Improvement Program from Lindahl Brothers Incorporated of Bensenville, Illinois, in an amount not to exceed $4,584,945.84.
Second.
And Joel, I thought that we were budgeting $6 million for the road improvement program.
Correct. So within the $6 million, we set aside about $500,000 for patching, striping, sealing. So we have about $5,500,000 that we usually set aside. we estimated at that amount, but the bids came in lower. And so we can then do some more neighborhoods, and we're putting together that list that we would come back to the board for some additional
So
neighborhoods.
we're going to try and get these folks to expand their unit pricing.
We'll take their unit pricing, and then we can do we'll factor in how many more other neighborhoods.
Right, that's what I'm saying, and try and get them to step up and do the other units. That's great. I always love it when pricing comes in lower than we expect.
And so therefore, the slide deck that you are seeing currently is the neighborhoods that we have projected. We highlighted in blue as well for the bidders, just to know that they're also fixing some of the inlet areas. So wherever they're working, they're doing inlets while they're doing the roads as well. If you do the next slide, and then that's what, kind of summary of where we landed at with our maintenance and our road, and then total is our estimate. So we had very good pricing, as you can see, very tight and clustered, and we are using Lindell. Lindell is recommended, and we've used them before, but they haven't been one of our road contractors in a couple years now.
Yeah,
just pricing
I'm familiar with all four of those companies, and there's only one I have issues with, and Lindell's now one of them, so. Any other comments? Call the roll.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Rediszewski.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye. And Joel, how many road areas are we getting done there? Have they numbered?
So currently, there's 8 total areas. The blue areas is duplicate, obviously, with utility work. And so hopefully we can get 1 or 2 more other areas. And we'll bring that back to the board for approval, obviously, for that change to the contract.
Awesome.
But we can't go over 50%.
Correct. Well, you can, we just have to waive the bid process. Correct, correct. But within the current contract, we can do it, we can go up to 50%, so, which I think is well below, or well above our budget, so.
Correct.
Okay, great. Next.
Main pump station pump number 3 replacement -23-014 RFP bid award.
Mr. Mayor,
Trustee Radiszewski.
I move to recommend to the Board of Trustees to approve awarding the bid for the main pump station Pump 3 to Integral Construction of Romeoville, Illinois, for an amount not to exceed $523,200, $473,200 plus $50,000 contingency.
Second.
And Joel, what was the budget on this?
Our budget was 500,000.
So we're right at budget.
Correct.
Okay, good. Any questions? Call the roll.
Trustee Rediszewski.
Aye.
Trustee Compass.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Mayor Pico.
Aye.
Geographic Information System presentation.
Good evening. Thanks for having us. My name is Greg Newton. I'm the Director of Geospatial Services for Gaywald Hamilton Associates. We are an engineering consulting firm based out of Vernon Hills, Illinois, and we're the primary GIS consultant for the village. And we've been in that role since about 2021, which I'll get into a little bit more. With me here tonight, I have some members of the village staff, Scott Lucan from the engineering department, Cody Rennells from Public Works, and Mai Dang from Dev Services. So we're going to give kind of a brief overview of the GIS system, where it started a few years ago and how far we've come over the past few years. and then talk about how staff are using it, the tools available to staff, and then also some of the services that we're providing to the public and other stakeholders as well. So first off, just in case you're unfamiliar with GIS, we're essentially talking about a computer mapping software. So if you're familiar with Google Maps or Apple Maps on your phone, think of that, but an interactive map, but you can add localized data like zoning, utilities, et cetera. And this is a pretty common tool used in municipalities and across many other sectors that I listed out here. And it's primarily used as an asset management tool for tracking assets. You know, we're talking about like the road program, you know, where your roads are, what condition they're in, how much of it you have, or utilities, where your water main breaks happening, et cetera, where your utilities are, what they are, and how much they're worth, and what condition they're in. So it's a tool that allows you to make fast, efficient decisions, and when you're planning out these big municipal projects or capital improvement projects, it's a very important tool and widely used in the government sector, and then it's made its way into other business sectors and engineering and military as well. So quick roadmap of, like I said, where we started. So in late 2020, village staff started recognizing that the village GIS was not up to the standard that it should be for a village like Orland Park. So they reached out to a few consultants, including us, and solicited an RFP for a GIS strategic assessment and strategic plan to essentially assess the current status of the GIS at the time in 2020, and then put a plan forward to revamp the system and get it to where it needed to be. So back in 2020, we were dealing with issues like every department had their own separate GIS database. So Dev Services had a different database than Public Works, and PD was using a different address system than Village Hall. So nobody was communicating, nobody was sharing data. There were duplicate data sets, no single point of truth. Staff were accessing GIS data through cumbersome, expensive software applications instead of via a website. And field staff could only access GIS data through a laptop instead of on mobile devices, which is kind of the industry standard. So we started on full-time with the village in spring 2021 as the GIS consultant, and since then we've built out a new system. Now staff are accessing data through web URLs instead of through software. We have mobile data in the field, and we're moving into to some new ventures like 3D mapping and establishing accuracy for the village data, and keep trying to improve things to get it to where it should be. And if you could play the video here, Ben. So let's see, go back, there you go. So this is just a quick video demo, and we have a few of these. So this is the village website, and off of the village website, there's a public-facing GIS hub. So this page here, in its first full year being launched, 2022, had over 150,000 views. So it's really heavily used. And off this page, you can access this one-stop shop application, which has a lot of relevant village data, zoning, parcel address data. So this is all accessible to the public, and this is available there. We'll get into some of the other applications on the site as well, but essentially the way the system is set up is there's the public-facing external system, and then an internal-facing system for staff where you can access things like utilities and other data that maybe you wouldn't want to have public-facing. That's more for staff use. So,
Could we, sorry to interrupt, regarding that map, could we do something on the website where we have some layers so people can see the road program since 2019, the parks program since 2019, those maps you just put up there would be perfect to put up there so they can actually look at that and access that information and know that, you know, this is what's been being done.
yeah, and that's a great use for it, showing public or village projects to the public, and anything that you want to share out that can be represented spatially or on a map, this is the perfect place to do it. So with that, I'm going to pass things along to Scott Lukin from engineering.
Yeah, thank you, Greg, and thank you everybody for having us here. So primarily, I use our GIS program every single day almost. One of the great things that Greg did not mention is it's not just for village utilities, village information. You can also reference items like Cook County data, FEMA data. Fun fact, it's actually faster to use our portal than going on FEMA to find flood information.
I'm shocked.
So, yeah. So as far as, like I said, yeah, going off of that efficient analysis, if a resident wants if they've submitted a pool permit, I can instantly load up their address to take a look at utilities nearby. If a developer is curious about a property, can do the same sort of thing. Yeah, again, regulation compliance, I can get basic measurements off of it. I can click on pipes, parcels, find out the information I need very quickly. One of my favorite elements to the system that we use is the exhibit creation tool. Again, if that resident or developer has any questions, it's literally just 2 clicks away and I can create a professional exhibit to either send out to a resident. I make these exhibits with almost every single meeting that we have with developers, so a very widely used tool that I use here. So again, residents, utility companies, and contractors are the main ways engineering is sending these exhibits out. And then just highlighting a very village-specific project that we have. So in engineering, we're taking a look at each one of the curb ramps and assessing them for the requirements with the Americans with Disabilities Act. So Greg and his staff basically put together this interface to where we literally, our engineering inspector goes out there, he has a GIS tool, he says, I'm here at this specific curb ramp right here today. And each one of those questions at the bottom that's being highlighted right now is basically a different question that is applicable to the ADA requirements. So we can zoom in on specific ones, and I believe we're somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 90% done, I think right now, Khurshid, yep. So, and again, I believe all this is included with the monthly report as well, so. And with that, it's just kind of going through an example, again, just going off of the form that we have, each criteria for each ramp. You can also upload photos, so then we can see when we looked at it, the condition that we looked at it. For our new developments that are going in, we'll be checking this as well. If there's curb ramps to see, so we're not duplicating work later. Let's get it done now before the village accepts it.
Let me guess where that's at with pavers.
Yeah, pavers are definitely an interesting one. Yep, you can see there, that's a fun ramp to deal with right there. So, yeah, like I said, about 80 to 90% done with that whole process. We're still kind of in the data gathering process right now, but eventually we would use this tool to implement any neighborhood changes or programs off of that for remediation. So with that, I will hand it over to Cody, our GIS or Public Works Department.
This down button.
Yeah.
Hello, my name is Cody Reynolds. I work in Public Works, GIS technician. I work with Joel every day. So a couple of the ways that Public Works uses GIS, Greg mentioned it earlier, asset management is a big thing. The Village GIS has over 50,000 utility structures, over 1,100 miles of pipes and sewers, 35,000 trees, 480 lane miles of roadway, and all of these data sets require periodic updating and editing to keep them current and accurate. So that is a big part of what I do. And the idea is we want to keep these data sets accurate so then we can share this data out with people working in Public Works and the public so they can make better decisions. In doing that, I've created some internal apps for the staff to use as reference. We have some things that are available mostly in the office to assist the customer service representatives when people call. So we have an app for right-of-way permits, and we frequently get calls from residents, why do I have all of these utility marking flags in my yard, or why are they digging up my parkway? What's going on? So one of the apps I've created is for tracking the right-of-way permits. And if one of our customer service representatives gets a call, they can open this app, search the address, and they can see, oh yeah, ComEd put in for a permit, right-of-way permit 3 months ago. they're doing a reliability upgrade, and we can move on. It usually helps things out. We also have apps for our tree inventory, park, fire hydrant lookup, among other things. Another big part of what I've done is try to get more data collection in the field. An example of that is our sign replacement program. The top photo you see on the top right there is how we used to collect field information for sign replacements. So it was a paper form. They would actually open up their Compass app on their phone and get the coordinates from that and plug them in on the far right, and then write down what kind of sign it was. Now, right below that, you can see he can use his phone. He just fills out a quick form. This is the kind of sign. This is where it's at. It tracks the location when he completes the form, and I can go back in and see everything that he's replaced, and we can keep our sign inventory up to date. We're also using it. We have a new tool, the Trimble Catalyst DA2, which is a high accuracy GPS receiver. Down to centimeter accuracy, so we're using that to collect road patch locations. We're doing park light inventory is a new thing that we're starting. And it's going to expand from there. The tool's very new. Utility locates is a big use for that as well. One of the big public-facing things that we have is our snowplow tracker, and this is kind of the big flashy thing. Greg worked on this pretty extensively. There's links on the website. The residents can go and they can see where all our snowplows are. And there's actually timestamp locations, information on where the vehicles have been. And the dots are color-coded. Darker is older and lighter is newer. And I believe it tracks that for the past 8 hours. We get frequent questions on snow plowing as well. Obviously, this was a pretty light season for snow, so not a lot of action, but December 1st through April 1st, this happened.
Don't say that. Are you,
Sorry.
Joel, I think there's some remedial training that needs to be done here. Don't say that it's not here.
All right, with that, I'm going to pass it off to Mai.
Good evening, trustees. My name is Mai, and I'm a planner in the Development Services Department. Within the Development Services Department, the primary users of the GIS software would be the permit technicians in the front counter, as well as planners like myself. I primarily use GIS software to determine the applicable land development regulations for each parcel in the village. For example, a recent development petition that was approved by the board was Waterford Point. It's a residential subdivision. As soon as I was able to determine the general area of that subdivision, I was able to use GIS to determine how many wetlands were on the parcel, as well as the current zoning districts and the current zoning the adjacent subdivisions surrounding the subdivision. Oops. Here is a public notification tool that I could use to determine how many parcels are surrounding the subject property within 300 feet that must be notified per code regulations for public notices purposes. And the video will continue here. So as you can see, all the parcels around this particular parcel will have to be notified of any development petitions requiring special use permits or variances that will have to be approved by the board. Okay, and as soon as a development petition is approved by the board, petitioners can go ahead and come in for building permits. At that point, the petitioners can reach out to the permit technicians at the front counter, and from there, the front counter technicians reach out to Greg, who will assist with determining the right addressing for each building permit. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Well, thanks again, and yeah, to sum it up, I know it's a lot of information. We tried to present this in a really quick format. We did this for the Tech Commission a few weeks ago, and we talked to them for about an hour and a half because they had a lot of good questions. So, anyway, thanks again for having us, and we're happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
So are there any questions? And I guess the first ones I'll bring out is it seems to me that, George, we were just having a discussion about operational efficiencies and making things faster. I mean, we certainly need to, in development services, use this to get a much faster turnaround for our customers, because we know that that's always an issue for them. You know, any developer, time is money, obviously, and I'm well aware that it's not always us that is the bottleneck, but anything we can turn around faster. And then additionally, you know, I'm assuming these things get turned into work orders right away, automatically, so that our public works staff is getting to things more timely, more quickly.
So what, there was a demonstration here of 311 as well, and that's one of our work order tracking systems that's automatically incorporated into this.
Yeah, so the 311 system was incorporated into the snowplow tracker app that you might have seen at the end, so residents can report a concern if they see anything in the snowplow application. We're also working with the various departments on integrating with the Tyler system, so a lot of the work order systems that the village uses are using the Tyler software. And there is GIS integration involved with that, so it can link directly to the village's address databases and utilities for creating work orders for particular utility structure, things like that. So we've been working with IT staff, the Tyler consultants, and other village staff and departments to help with those integrations as well.
And with regard to the efficiencies, in a little over 2 years, the transformation of our GIS has been incredible, and want to thank Greg and the rest of our staff for that. What we've done now is we've created a very strong foundation for GIS, and it's only going to take off from here.
Yep. Yeah, thanks. And the staff have been great. You know, this group up here, most of us are in the GIS steering committee, so we help with village GIS strategic decisions, and we've had great support from village leadership, and yeah, things have moved very quickly, but like George was saying, it was just the start. We still have a lot we can do with it and keep making it a better tool for the village and residents. So.
Mayor, you mentioned how it speeds up. Imagine the olden days where we would have to go back to Public Works, look at a drawing, try to find the utilities, but now they have it on their phone. They can do it right there. The guy who's doing the Julie markings, he can just go to the next ticket, and then he can look on his phone and see where all the utilities, where he has to mark the utilities out. So it's tremendous speed and better for the organization. And ADAs, when the road program goes through and does the ADA ramps, we then change the information in the GIS to say it's complete and updated. So it's an integrated system with engineering.
Great. Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Strategic plan update.
All right, and if I could have the clicker. Right here. So strategic planning, we're going to have kind of a workshop, working session here. If you recall, we talked about what our plan was going forward, and at the beginning of February. The fact base, like we talked about, was by and large developed. We have a lot of facts we've developed over the last couple of years, and we're really focusing on developing our options and analyzing is where we're at right now. so that we have a series of options and some choices for us to make, but also we will evaluate those so that when we go to make those in the next phase, we will actually have the information required to make the trade-offs that we need to make. So that's the goal here. These were the different groups that each trustee was working with. And I also want to remind staff through all of this, as well as the trustees, we've already set some constraints. Okay, so, you know, I noticed this when I saw some of the SWOT analyses and things like this. It's like rehash of what we already know. Okay, we know that we have budget constraints. We don't need to keep rehashing that in every SWOT analysis from every department. We know we have budget constraints because we just, you know, we need to keep that below 3% annually if we're going to be fiscally responsible to our residents. Same thing with wage and benefits, what we're trying to do with our property tax. So ultimately, from an operational perspective in particular, we need to try and find efficiencies because we're not going to have a ton of growth on the operational side. We have to be as wise as we can with our dollars because unless somebody knows something I don't, I'm not anticipating some massive permanent sales tax windfall or something like that at the present time. So now maybe through growth, we'll start to see some, but right now we don't have that. So those are some of the things that we obviously put a constraint on. We were going to start with public works, not police. So we'll come back to you, Eric. So I'll start with Joel. If you want to pass this on down to him. Just so you know, I worked with Joel in Public Works, and we've had several meetings, because they have multiple departments, and probably a bigger piece of this, given the capital, all capital kind of flows through Public Works.
Good evening. So when we did our SWOT analysis, we looked at some of the strengths in Public Works. And I won't read all of them because I know you guys can read the slides. So I'll just hit on a couple of things from a strengths perspective. We did look at the fleet, but we saw that a single point managing the fleet is a good thing, a good strength, and that we can then support like other departments like PD with in-house staff for the PMs and breakdowns of vehicles. In utilities, we also have a long-range plans, and we've set that in the water rate study, so that's a huge strength in Public Works. And there's a lot of redundancy working with engineering on making sure our water systems and our systems have that redundancy. In streets, as the mayor has mentioned, we've invested a lot into our streets, and so we will continue doing that. It has increased about 20% already, and we have a goal to get up even higher, up to the 70 range. In parks, we've invested a lot into our parks. It's a huge strength in Public Works, and that is actually a good process with our public to allow them to have input into that selection of the parks amenities. And then forestries and the CPAC and facilities, we have great experienced staff, I would say, with those areas. You have to have some specialty, and each of those have that specialty, and the PM programs are strong in those areas.
And what I'll throw in here for strengths that I think are really critical. So one of the things that we talk about a SWOT analysis, and you talk about business versus the public sector, is that a business takes their strengths and they really look at them and say, okay, how can we use these to get a competitive advantage? Well, the village's goal is not really to get a competitive advantage. I mean, yes, we want to bring businesses here. Yes, we want to bring residents here, but we're not out competing to try and, have more sales than the next town over, right? So the strengths are more, they're not as impactful, I guess, for our strategic planning, just because we're not looking to use it to grow our company, if you will, because we are what we are. So there's much more focus on your weaknesses and your threats, and how you're going to address those, because that's how because we are, again, we're constrained, and we have to provide certain levels of services that we have to maintain, and for example, public safety or our roads. So it's really important that we address those issues. Go ahead.
So in weaknesses, as we look at how do you maintain your infrastructure, we kind of looked at infrastructure includes the fleet. So in vehicle and equipment and our fleet of vehicles, some of our software is a little outdated. So we were thinking that there's something there strategically to look at that software, as well as we do our spread out some of the vehicles. Sometimes that is hinders knowledge of where things are at, and they're kind of spread everywhere. Within utilities, we have a pump down right now that needs a lot of maintenance, and we just approved it tonight. So that concerns us anytime one of our main pumps needs repair in the pump station. We also have aging piping. We have a lot of breaks, like GIS presentation. We track all those breaks, and we know where they're at. And so if there's a cluster of them, we know that piping needs to be either lined or repaired. So so from a strategic perspective, how do we plan for those projects for the utilities? We also have storm basin neglect, which we are working, and we've put some money towards those storm basins to try to keep those up to where they're not failing. And then our lift stations is a long-term. The age of those are getting older, and we can convert them to a more safety access point in the future from dry to wet in that situation. In streets, some of the threats we have is obviously as we annex some neighborhoods into the village, they're not up to our standards. And so additional funds would be required for that. We have some major roads, 143rd, 151st. They're getting a little more and more potholes, and we're patching them. But in order to do that, we got to program dollars for that. We don't have really a standard for parking. The lights areas. LaGrange Road, the design, it's a high maintenance kind of design. So we have to paint the fences, we have to fix the bricks. So it's a little bit not the best design out there. And then our fleet, again, from B&E, our snow fleet is getting up in age, and we're trying to replace that. Parks, we have weaknesses. We just have a lot of them, a lot more than the normal inventory of standard of parks and playgrounds. But it's good for our residents, obviously, but it is a weakness. Forestry, understanding what the residents have to do and what we have to maintain. There's a lot of diversity in our forest. A lot of red maples and a lot of maples. It's huge, So we do have to try to diversify that because, I'll show you some threats coming in down the way. And then also our pool, it has a lot of maintenance. It's a weakness that we have. And the facility is about 32 years old, and we have a lot of capital investments that we need to be looking into the pool. Last, for facilities, we have a lot of staff staggered in areas. We have a lack of storage areas. The age of the facilities are getting up there. We're talking to 30 years, 35s. Try to get buildings at least 50 to 100 years. That's, you try to extend the life of the facility, but you have to invest back into the facility to get those long ages. And we really didn't have a good plan, and this planning process will help us get there. And then we haven't really invested a lot into the buildings in the past because a lot of the systems, roofs, HVAC, they're long-term things, but every 20, 25 years, now you get into having to start to replace those. Any adds, Mayor?
No, probably go to threats next, since the opportunities are going to address both.
Okay, so in threats, the market is very uncertain now. Even orders that we have placed, they have said we might get to that order. It's with the chips and the the delays. That's a huge threat. Our fuel tanks are old, and we need to replace them, so it's a must-do. One of our heavy lifts is down, it's deadlined, and we have 3 of them, so we're using the other 2, but that's deadlined right now. So that's something we need to plan here in the short term. Utilities, threats, we have outside sources that may require certain things, MWRD, the IDNR requirements, cyber attacks on any type of systems we have, and obviously try to figure our water rates. It's all based on water rates for upstream. Streets, these are sidewalk conditions. Obviously, we want to make sure that they're all safe, and that's a must-do. And parks, there's a threat of the village just growing, right? And as new developments come online, some kind of green space is usually incorporated, or playgrounds or so forth. In forestry, that we talk about that, but diseases, you can easily wipe out a whole species of trees, and there we'll lose all that green canopy that all the residents love in the neighborhood if we don't have a good diversity. And then talked about CPAC. We're looking probably around $7 million of investment over that in the next couple of years. We have to do some major equipment behind the scenes investments that we'll have to do to make sure the CPAC is functioning well. And then Orland Health and Fitness, that has about another $7 million of investment in Orland Health and Fitness. We received the building, obviously, and we have deferred as much maintenance as possible, but that is a threat that we need to, that those systems can break down, and then if no one can go to the Orland Health and Fitness Center, that's a threat, obviously. People can't actually use it. And lastly, obviously, federal state mandates and supply chain issues. We deal with that this past year tremendously with all those threats.
So now I'll jump in. So when we look at the weaknesses and the threats and why these things are really important, so we all know we're constrained operationally. We're also constrained on from a capital perspective, but some of these capital things we have to do, so we're going to have to figure out how to finance those, right? You look at, Joel mentioned, the LaGrange Road. What I didn't learn until I got here is that we actually designed the landscaping on LaGrange Road, which as a landscaper, I was going, why are we doing this on LaGrange Road? We're doing high maintenance stuff on LaGrange Road, and we did low maintenance stuff at the police station. It's just kind of bass-ackwards. One of the things we're trying to do is actually replace some of this year, we're trying to replace some of the grass with some fescue that doesn't require mowing but once a year, so that we're not out there with lawnmowers all the time. But you put pavers alongside grass, alongside a road, not exactly good maintenance. So it was like $7 million extra to do that landscaping. I know it drives Krashid nuts when he sees it. And then it's also about $500,000 of maintenance a year. So those decisions that were made really impact. So that's what we need to think of. And the reason I bring this up is because when we're strategic planning, we got to think about this. We're saddling future boards and the future Orland Park with the buildings, with all of these things. So we need to make sure that we're thoughtful when we do that. Some of the other stuff that was up there, fuel tanks. Our fuel tanks are fine, but they're past their useful life. And a leak in the fuel tank now becomes an EPA issue. So the risk there is catastrophic practically. So we need to think about moving the replacement of those up a few years. It's in the 10-year plan, but they need to be moved up because that risk is just not tenable, in my opinion. Same thing with the heavy lift. We have 3 of them. One's down. Well, if another one goes down, we have a catastrophe on our hands as far as being able to repair stuff. We can live with one down. So we need to move that forward a couple of years as well, so that we have that. Now, if one of the other ones goes down, we're not completely devoid of having the lifts we need to fix our vehicles. Sidewalks, another thing we've analyzed, and there's liabilities associated with that. So do we want to do that over a 5-year plan, or do we want to invest more and get it done in 2 years? Which is probably as fast as we could do it, is 2 years. But I think that's right, Joel? We think we could maybe do it in 2 years. Do we want to do it that fast so we get those liabilities? Again, mitigating those risks. We're going to have to do it anyways. what's the timing of those things. The CPAC filters falls in the same boat. It's a filter system that's, again, past its useful life. We do a great job of maintaining it, so it's in great shape. But if we lose the filters unexpectedly, we lose an entire season with the pools. If we proactively plan, then we can actually not lose a season. So I think it's important. Now, some things you can live with the failure because it's not crushing you somewhere else, and you can go get it repaired. This is not one of those things, because if we lose the pool filters, we lose the pool for a year, and we lose the revenue for a year, et cetera. So that's a big deal. So these are things that we've just identified that are threats that are just not, they're just something that we have to move things forward to address, because they're in our 10-year plan, but we need to make sure that they're done in a timely fashion so we don't put ourselves at risk. Orland Health and Fitness is another example of what happens when you don't think about the future and the impact. We've spent $5 or $6 million on it already. We got another $7 million we have to spend on that because we didn't do the due diligence we should have to. I mean, you think about the due diligence we do, like just with the cultural center, the due diligence we did on that and on our buildings to see what we needed. We didn't do any of that, and we just took in a building that was, hadn't had maintenance done on it for 7 years because they were planning on getting rid of it. So we got stuck with that. So those are things we got to be mindful of. And so we tried to, and we all should look at the opportunities that we have as ways to mitigate our weaknesses, mitigate our risks and the threats that we face, as well as everyone, because we know we're constrained on an operational budget side, everyone should be looking for efficiencies. So those are really the things we should be doing as far as when we're looking at the various opportunities we have. You just want to go to the next pages?
Yes, I can. So we kind of summarized the opportunities with a set of other slides, and we'll share that with you now. So in vehicles and equipment, we looked at our cycles of when we have to replace, and by either going to, like for police vehicles, it's from a 6-year replacement to a 7 or 8. We're going to explore how much is that savings, because instead of 10 vehicles we order, we just ordered 9, but that one extra vehicle over a lifespan can get some savings for us as a village. Also, we're not just police. We're looking across the board in public works and parks and rec. What are the cycles? And with more of a breakdown years versus when the most ideal life cycle, because we do good maintenance, and therefore by doing good maintenance, then you can maybe extend your years of your vehicles a couple extra years, and you get longer life of vehicle, less cost to the village.
Yeah, and I think what's important here is that looking across all of our vehicles, if we extended them all 2 years, we did a rough math, it's $500,000 of savings a year in our capital budget that could be used. Just because instead of buying 10 vehicles, you're buying 9 police vehicles. Also, spending $2,000 extra on the bed, as Andy told us, the beds are what's failing, not the chassis, not the engines. So if we buy stainless steel beds, the beds will last. We'll actually be able to reuse the beds by the time the chassis and the engines fail. So, and then we talked about some of the specialty equipment we had as well. Like a tree truck or something like that, a recommended, of course, manufacturers all recommend a life cycle change of 10 or 12 years. Well, we know that the way we maintain them, we can get 20 or 25 years out of these vehicles, and as long as we're getting that out of those vehicles, then it makes sense for us to keep them. So those are some of the things we're going to be analyzing so that we know exactly what our trade-offs are in doing that.
And we'll bring that back. Another great idea was the police vehicles are SUVs now. And once they're used, we can use those vehicles here then for vehicles at the village hall, and we have a spattering of some other ones, and get more long life of that vehicle even further before we auction off. And plus, some of the other vehicles are, some folks are need an SUV kind of for materials and stuff like that, so.
And then you also don't have to buy new vehicles for
No new
VMO,
vehicles.
because you're recycling those just like we do for our ASDA and CSOs.
We also kind of looked at, obviously, anything in the weather, it gets rusted, corroded, it reduces the life of it, so maybe covered areas for some outdoor storage areas, we're looking at that. And then looking at more out of service or broken versus your particular cycle year, we'll look at that as well. The other piece I mentioned, improved software, something we can explore for our fleet management, for preventive maintenance, but also manage the fleet, of what that software can be, help improve our operations. And then we talked about the fuel tank for a failure with loss of fuel in the ground. Utilities, we did put a project in the budget to have a second pump station. We eliminated that out of the plan. That was quite a hefty number in there. We did find a double air counting into things, so we eliminated that. That started driving down the numbers. We adjusted the lift stations to be in the next water rate. It's not currently in the current water rate, but in the future water rate as a projects for those lift stations. We also started making sure we're projecting outward, looking at those water main break maps. We know of areas that we can work on in the out years for those water main projects beyond 28. And then we obviously start working on the projections for the water rate for major projects in the next water rate round. We have some sluice gates. Those are gates in between the reservoir. It allows the water to pass between the reservoir and the ground. They need some repairs, but we didn't have a very good estimate on the cost, so we're evaluating that.
And I think what's important here is, just through having this discussion, we recognized we don't really need a second pump station because of all the other redundancy that we've put into the system. We have the redundancy without the pump station. And then, so just no pressure, but we found $19 million right here to cut down on what we're spending. So if you all do that, we're going to be good to go.
Within streets, obviously we're continuing the street program. We'll keep that for about $6 million through 2027, but then we'll drop that down to about 4.2 if we get that good rating of about 70% that we're shooting for. Sidewalks, we talked a little bit about that already. We are looking at in-house that we can grind the low tripping hazards down with in-house grinding tools, but the larger ones where you have to use concrete replacement, we'll probably be doing that outsourced. We're looking at the lights in the neighborhoods, whether that is the most prudent time to do lights right now. With all the other work we have, and we'll be bringing that back to you to look at that. We're getting a lot of information from residents that's not the highest priority of theirs as well. And so
So Bill's going to be happy because in his neighborhood, which is the one neighborhood that voted for them, the tune changed a bit when they realized that we don't have easements and such, and so we have to actually get easements, and them giving us easements and letting us dig through their yards to get the light, and then the opinion changed a bit. So it looks like projects they'll probably stay the way they are, because ultimately when it comes down to it, they're older neighborhoods. We just don't have the infrastructure in place like we would have in a new neighborhood. And so it gets a lot more costly, and we have to dig up their yards a lot more. So Bill's going to be thrilled. Nancy, not so much.
Thank you for yielding to my opinion. I'm sure that's what he said.
I'm pretty sure that's not what I said, but hey, if that's what he needs to feel good, that's all we need.
The last one on this sheet is we can utilize the funds that we set aside for that project. The surface transportation program gets the big roads, 143rd, 151st, Orland Parkway. We can use those dollars to that design, and then gives us more points when we go bring it to the next call for work, which will be 2024. But the earliest we would see any of that road work, though, unfortunately, is FY '28. So even more important to have as many points possible so we can fight against the other projects. So that's why we want to kind of look at that opportunity. Talked a little bit about this. And we're looking at maybe with Cook County to use ARPA funds to bring the standard. Maybe they can have the standard already done, so when we annex, it's more attractive for us to annex properties, and therefore we don't have to actually flip the bill to actually bring the properties that are being annexed.
And just as an FYI, Cook County has expressed interest in that, of getting some of their, properties that are isolated out of their system. And they've been informed that the reason why towns want to do that is because their infrastructure is not up to speed. So they're considering putting dollars towards getting the infrastructure up to speed in those select locations, not just for us, but for other towns. So.
We also looking just holiday lights. It's not holiday anymore, but we come up with a plan for how to start replacing broken ones in the future, where we're researching some options for replacement. Instead, the broken ones are just at a point you can't fix it anymore. The wind has been breaking them. John Humphrey Complex, we're just making sure that when the lighting goes in there, we are prepped for the future, if they ever, with the ball fields, with the schools. And then last one was to investigate with the county IGA. They might be able to give additional funds for the IGA for some roads, some areas that we can fix their road areas. And we're in conversations with them. Last two slides, natural resources and facilities. We talked about the playgrounds. We're looking at in FY '24, we'll be kind of reducing that down. Right now, we do about 6. If we spread it out based on the ratings, we're researching whether we do 4 in '24, and then FY '25 through '27 would do 3, and then '28 and on would just be 2. So we're kind of getting at a lower glide scope with that. And how much does that save the village? And we'll give that information to you.
And part of the rationale for this is that if you look at some of these parks that we're doing, well, one, every time we redo someone's park, we think we're doing a good thing, and we end up getting an earful because they like what was there before. And so to look at, one of the things we talked about is assessing our parks. Instead of assessing ADA and safety, which we've already done, to now focus our assessments into park condition and playground equipment condition. I don't think anyone here or anyone in the village cares if their equipment's 30 years old, if it's in great shape. So we need to start looking at it from that perspective, because now we don't have to worry about it. If it's in great shape and we leave it there, we're not gonna hear anything from the residents, et cetera. Because we do know that every time we change it, there are a handful of people that aren't happy no matter what you do. So, so just try, and oh, by the way, it's more fiscally prudent and frees up some money.
The second bullet is comprehensive planning with our Recreation and Park Department, just for where everything would be being placed, and that can shape their budget as well for that, for courts, pickleballs, et cetera. We also have just thoughtful development with our development services of if there needs a playground or not. We prefer the green space, since we do have, if it's an infill development, obviously we might have a playground if it's a brand new one, but it's, off away from everybody else. But just because we do have a high volume of playgrounds. Talked about the CPAC already. We do have a lot of work involved there. Orland Health, we talked about that. Also, we have some other facilities, and the goal really here is from a strategic perspective, is how can we consolidate, how can we get rid of maybe some opportunities to get rid of old buildings that have high maintenance costs, and shrink our square footprint down in that regards. So we came up with a couple ideas that we're going to research, and you can see those there. Also, we have a storage building that is literally rocking that we have to replace the garage. The athletic maintenance facility needs to be replaced. And then we're looking at both the first responder projects for the range and public works areas as projects to consider. And then all of this involves updating our ClearGov with more realistic project loading so that you guys can make a decision.
So if you want to turn it back over to the chief. So you can see, so that all the department heads, all the trustees can see kind of how where we took this with Public Works. It's about, all of those opportunities are the things we're going to come to with, here's the dollars, here's the impact, so we can make the trade-offs that we need to make. And that's ultimately what every department's going to do. Now, Public Works has probably as much or more than everyone else combined, so that's one of the reasons why it was so long. But that's where we'd like all of these, every department to drive towards, so that we can then actually have, dollars associated with that. An example is, what's the savings of going to 7 years with the police cars, or 8 years? What's the impact? What's the budget impact of that? And what's the downside of that? Is there a downside? Talking to our fleet manager, he doesn't think there is a downside, but that's something we'll have to continually evaluate if we do make that decision. Is there a downside, right? Because we may have to shift gears if we find that there is. So those are the types of things that we're going to be bringing to the board from Public Works so that you know what those impacts are. And ultimately, the goal, particularly with capital, is to, get it even more, close that gap that we know we have over 100 million in unfunded projects, close that gap in some way through the savings that we have, how we do things differently, et cetera.
Right, I will be a little shorter than Joel over here. I'll take my time.
You are a little shorter than Joel.
I'm going to brag a little bit here, not just because I'm the police chief, but I think some of the strengths that we came up with during our SWOT analysis was our extensive relationship that we have with the community. It's phenomenal. I can't thank you guys enough. And the law enforcement agencies that we have around, not only in Illinois, but around the world now. We have great relationships. We ILEAP reaccredited earlier this year, so we're following the best practices, and we have state-of-the-art equipment and technology. Also, I don't want to leave out our staff. Very professional, not only our sworn, but our civilian. We have great people that work here. Some of the weaknesses, as Joel touched on, we currently don't have a firearms training facility. 30 years ago, where it wasn't developed as much. So we understand that through the years it's developed, it's not a good location anymore. So that's one of the weaknesses. Recruitment, it's everywhere. Everyone's having problems with recruitment. It's not just law enforcement. I think if you talk to anybody in any field, they're having recruitment issues. We're feeling it more in law enforcement, but I think here in Orland Park we do a good job with it. We're doing a lot better than other places. And our Axon redaction workload, we recently got body cameras, and we're getting a lot more FOIAs, which is taking more staff time to go through those and redact them. Opportunities, we're working on a Fusus Connect camera program, which is it's a single platform that allows us to take video cameras from the school district, from any private business if they want to get in this program, and we're able to live view these videos to where it's a real-time crime center, so we can have somebody looking to see if we have crime occurring. I think it's good for the schools, good for the mall, good for our retail. Employment development training we're going through. Communications radio network upgrade, we're working on that right now. We have just received bids for that, so we're going through that process. NIBRS, we are field testing it right now. We're in week 2 of it, so that's upcoming. And we streamlined our fleet equipment to where if you get in one of the vehicles, they're all the same for the officers. So officer safety wise, it's a good thing.
And that ties into what we're doing at B&E.
And threats, of course, we got increased service calls are increasing every year, increased in criminal activity throughout the state. State mandate, the training with this new Safety Act that's they're still trying to figure out here. We have more mandates, but I think we do a good job here in Orland Park of doing that, of doing the training and meeting our mandates. And employee retention within our dispatch center, we're seeing that is one of the problems that we're seeing a lot of.
Thanks, Chief. I think one good thing here, if anyone has anything to add, but I think that we're less at risk on the training side than most towns because we are, most of the things that are in there, we already do. There's a lot of towns that don't. So we've had the resources to do that, and we do that. So I think some of the big stuff, dollar-wise, the big stuff that's is going to be a training facility. That's going to be obviously the big ticket item that we've got to figure out.
Good evening. Absolutely pleased to present the SWOT analysis for Recreation and Parks. We're very proud of our department and the hard work that everybody does in our department. We focused on 5 areas of reach that we impact and serve residents in a large way. So our historical sites, and you can see the sites that are listed there. We have some terrific sites for our village. We do a lot of special events. So we have a strong team that presents these special events year-round. You can see that list there. Joel talked about all the facilities. We're the benefit of all that great work that they do. So there's a large asset of facilities there. And then programs, that's just a small sampling of some of our larger programs that you see listed there. And then our athletic surfaces and fields, it's a small staff there that do quite the production of work and really deliver a lot of services to our community. So we're very proud of all that staff. As we look at our strengths, we are proud of our staff. We have a certified staff, so most of us are certified recreation professionals, among other certifications that we all hold. Our staff is very dedicated and skilled. As I look at our staff, I don't really have to motivate them. They come to work motivated. They want to work hard. They want to deliver great services and programs and events and facilities. They're highly engaged, and that's priceless to have a staff that is highly engaged. We have a great culture, as we should. We're Recreation and Parks, and so we have a lot of fun in everything we do. We enjoy work. It's a little hard when I leave home and my wife knows I'm going to work, and I actually like it. We're consistently reliable in our services, so we provide a lot of services in our facilities because we have the pool and we have Sportsplex in all our facilities, and we consistently do a good job in those facilities. Our facilities are our assets, so our recreation facilities, our athletic facilities, and our historic facilities. We have great programs, great instructors, great contractors. We work with really good people in our department. We have excellent interdepartmental support, so we're very proud to work with all our departments. We receive a lot of support from a lot of talented people throughout the village. And our community is very engaged. So we have some community members here, and our board is very engaged, and we appreciate that. Our village's reputation really serves us well. Our reputation serves all our facilities, our events, and everything we do because we have a great reputation as a village. And our staff has a great imagination. We think about doing things, we think outside of the box. So we think there isn't anything that we can't do, and then we try to find a way to make it happen. Our weaknesses, we are a largely part-time staff division. So we have full-time staff, but really, and I don't have the exact percentage, we're really staffed by part-time staff for the most part. We have some process inefficiencies. We have a lot of work to do in a short period of time. So, especially when we get into the summer season, we're serving our athletic facilities and our events, and we're doing a lot of things all at once, and it's all time sensitive. So that's a little stressing for us. Natural grass, we love natural grass, but it gets a lot of play, and so it's hard to deliver quality services with the amount of play we get on our grass. Our facilities are getting older, and Joel and the board are taking great care of those, so we appreciate that. We have an inability to offset capital expenses, so we love to keep our facilities up to date, but those are large price tags, and operationally, that's hard for us to offset. Storage and marketing are weaknesses for us. The Stellwagen parking lot is a very small asset there in that parking lot, so it's hard to accommodate many people and do big events out there. The same with FLC, even though it's landlocked, it does create some problems in the use of that facility and the future use of that facility. Again, I mentioned the part-time staff, large-scale events. So again, we have a very committed, dedicated staff, but it can be taxing on our staff. We do have fun together, but they come to work a little bit tired on a lot of Monday mornings. And then one last weakness for us is we don't have a full-time person dedicated to sponsorships, volunteers, and marketing. And why we're proud of the amount of sponsorships we pulled in last year, we think we can do better, but it takes a lot of knocking on doors to make that happen. A lot of opportunities. So when we looked at the opportunities, we dreamed big. We always believe in that possibility, whether things can happen short-term, long-term, maybe they don't happen, but we want to put it on the table. So athletic storage building, that's a reality that's coming. Revenue generation, we believe there's lots of opportunity in revenue generation, and we always look for those things, and we're going to continue to look for those things. Parks Master Plan presents some great opportunities. So we have the 4 parks on the master plan. We hope to get lights at John Humphrey Complex Field 5 sooner than later, because that'll allow us to rent that facility, that field, more often when tournaments come to town. Lighted tennis courts and outdoor pickleball complex. We think those would be great assets for our community to be able to play later into the night, and not just summer when it's light till 9 o'clock, but on a nice April, May, and September and October nights, we can play a little bit later out there. Artificial turf on our fields that helps offset that overplay that happens out there. So we'd love to see that. It's a lower maintenance to do that. Centennial is on the master plan, but the older parts of Centennial is not. So we'd love to modernize Centennial and Dugan parks with cultural potentially going away and the old RDC site gone. Those are some great opportunities to redevelop that park into a terrific community park. There's a lot of opportunity there. At Sportsplex, we dreamed big. Pool, centralized entry desk. We have 2 desks there now. We'd love to have 1 entry desk that can maintain entry and exit in the facility. When the building was first built, where the climbing wall is, they actually considered putting a 2-story play structure there, and a lot of facilities have that. If you take a look at West Chicago, they have a terrific play structure. You can charge for that, you can rent for that. It is really could be a good asset. And then we have a lot of demand in group exercise classes. We do some classes just in the hallway on the 2nd floor, a cycling class there, so second studio would serve the building well. The Lake Cedric is a terrific asset for Orland Park. It can be utilized at a better capability if we had a marina there. We launch off some docks. It's a little bit difficult there. It's not very neat. The outlying soccer fields. So if we had more soccer fields, that would also reduce play on the turf. Seasonal events crew. So as we look at our staff, if we had a seasonal events crew like we do with our fields, in our pool, that staff could take on some of the burden of working a lot of the events and be professional at doing that. Centennial Park West programming. So again, we dream big. We see a lot of opportunity at Centennial Park West, so we look forward to that. Stellwagen parking lot would give us a great opportunity for, again, more programming and special events. It's such a gorgeous setting. We can do a lot there. New feature at the pool, so I dream really big. We have the sand volleyball there. It's really underutilized, and we get a lot of sand in the water. We don't like that. It's not good for the pool, not good for our filters. We would rather have a high feature, like a six slide feature that would handle a lot of people all at once without having any deep water. I know it's a big price tag, but it would be a great attraction there. And then just continued growth in our programs and special events, so we see all those as opportunities. Threats as mentioned, staff burnout and turnover, the ability to attract and retain full-time and part-time staff, the continued ability to continue to fund improvements. We have to stay committed to our facilities to have quality facilities. The aging equipment facility has been mentioned a couple times. Inflation is a big threat for us. People use discretionary income to participate in recreation programs, so inflation can be an impact to us. Competition from surrounding communities, so if we're hosting a concert and all the towns around us are hosting concerts or other events that can impact our attendance. Capital expenses, I mentioned before, large-scale free events. It's hard to offset large-scale free events. So 4th of July, fireworks are not cheap, and that's just something we can't offset financially because there is no admission fee to that. We have a large volume of facilities and athletic surfaces, and then our concession operations, there's not a lot of concession vendors out there, so we are going out for an RFP. If anybody knows anyone, we'll be happy to entertain and speak with them. And that would be all for Recreation and Parks.
So I have a couple comments, and I'll open up if anyone else does. So one is I appreciate dreaming big, but as we talked about, we have over $100 million shortfall in our capital budget already, and some of those projects are already on that project list. So I think anything that's beyond that in the next 10-year period probably has to be something that addresses a threat. A good example is, CPAC. That $8 million in CPAC was not on the 110 million, but the risk is too high. So we have to add that in. So I think you need to scale the dreams back a bit and look at what look what's in our capital plan, and then what addresses your threats and weaknesses, because I think realistically, beyond what we've already talked about potentially looking at on some of these projects, I think beyond that, it's frankly not going to happen. We're not going to be able to fund everything we have already. So you're better off focusing more attention on the stuff that we might actually do, and understand how we can do that more efficiently. The other thing I would say as an opportunity that you need to look at, and alternatives you need to look at, is we talk about our fields. And, artificial turfing those fields may be challenging. We're going to have a couple of artificial turf fields, though, which will give us the opportunity to take some fields offline to get them up to speed. So how can we do that more efficiently over a long period of time to get all of our fields up to speed? So I would be definitely looking at that. How are we going to address our field conditions, and how can we use those new turf fields that we have to help speed that up a little bit, because we've added some capacity. So those are some things I'd look at. And then the other thing that's a big threat, and we're working on it with one of our, not even our rep, but a state rep, is the part-time workers PTO. So, people think, oh, well, it's great. All part-time workers are going to be happy to be given mandatory PTO. Well, think about what that's going to do to our restaurants. Think about what that's going to do to our retail. But I can also tell you it's a $500,000 hit to the village budget, because all of our seasonal workers, all of our lifeguards, et cetera, it's an issue for all of us. So something that we're working on to try and get some relief legislatively, at least in the short term. It's a bad policy for the whole state, but at least we're trying to fix our little piece of it for now. But that's a threat as well. Anything else from the board? Okay.
All right, finance turn. I think you're going to see some common trends, some things that you've seen in other departments. But starting off with our strengths, we started off with a major strength as our people. We got well-qualified and competent staff, willing to change, they're resourceful, good teamwork ethic, good teamwork attitude, and always evolving and modernizing. Also, our community and our organization, strong financial position, supportive community. We're working through processes that mitigate risk. We've done a lot with risk management, contractual risk management, and exposure to that type of risk throughout the organization. Also, process improvement mindset throughout. Just a few weaknesses. Our systems and processes. Did I miss something here? Okay. Mainly our existing software, our former software, which we are moving away from, but we are still working with that for the next few years in certain capacities, but our current software system. Also, difficulties with employee transition and poor knowledge transfer from one generation of employee to the next. That is a traditional, it's a very common problem, but we do experience that, especially when there was such a departure of employees over the last several years. Onboarding and offboarding, sometimes we have hiccups there. And also lack of a digital historical record. Sometimes it's difficult to find things. We just don't know where things are, and especially when we've got such turnover, that historical knowledge of even where the boxes are can be a challenge as well. Some of our opportunities, of course, are people. We got new staff, new ideas. We've had an influx of training opportunities throughout the organization, which is seen as beneficial and has been beneficial to our folks. Also, we've got culture building activities and our award and recognition programs. In totality, those can, I think, move the needle a little bit with the morale of the employees. Opportunities for an increased cross training throughout the departments, and also building relationships with other departments, and so we can know each other a little bit better, put a face to a name. Opportunities with our systems and our processes. We are continuously working to create new procedures and have systems to be more efficient. That's our overall mindset every day, trying to think of better ways and more efficient ways to do things. The meter replacement program, currently the way it is right now is very challenging, and this is a long-term project that is going to create lots of efficiencies on the back end. And I think overall, just a willingness to invest in technology, new systems, new processes, and you know, I think that will be a huge opportunity throughout the organization. There are definitely threats to personal safety, things along the lines of building security. We do have people that work later on Monday nights, and they're oftentimes the only person in the building. That's a concern, and of course, you know, disasters throughout, natural disasters and others that affect the organization. Also threats to our systems and to our operations. Cybersecurity, we think about that all the time, especially as it relates to fraud and internal controls and areas of financial risk. Our current software and the long lag time, or the long time it's taking to convert our software systems. It's necessary, but that has causes a variety of challenges. And of course, underperforming revenues. That we always look at that as a concern. And it bears repeating again, but we look at all the time, but fraud risk and internal controls, top to bottom, that is something that we think about every single day. So some of the things that we have contemplated or looked at in our meetings with Trustee Healy and our staff, maximizing interest income wherever we can, while still minimizing the village's risk and our exposure. A few different revenue sources, utility tax, potentially for natural gas, electricity and utility, and water utility. Motor fuel tax, would be a pay at the pump type of a tax that would be a few cents more on the gallon rather than vehicle stickers. That might be a way to capture revenue from non-residents as opposed to just the residents that pay for the vehicle sticker, as well as reviewing the home rule sales tax rate or property tax rates. The debt strategy, right now previously we had a debt strategy that contemplated a flat annual debt service payment. Interest rates have affected that, and a variety of factors have affected the amount that we can borrow over the long term. So to continue to borrow that amount would require higher annual debt service payments, but that's just something to contemplate and look at as we move forward. Within the finance department, there are not too many options available remaining for outsourcing those roles and those positions. The positions we still have now would not be good options or alternatives for that. But potentially consolidating services with other entities, there's definitely some challenges with that. We want to provide good services to our residents and our customers first, so that can create some issues and some challenges. But those are the types of things that we think about on a day-to-day basis. Anytime there's a vacancy in a position, whether we can restructure the organization to be a little bit more or to take advantage of an opportunity for the organization. And that's all I have for the finance department.
So the one thing I have, or the couple things I have for finance is, one, you know, by and large, like a couple of our other departments as well, you are primarily an internal service provider. So really focusing on it and on efficiencies is important. And then the other area where it's really going to come into play for this process is we know that there's an entire, how are we going to fund the capital needs that we know have built up over, you know, from basically the neglect of the first 20 years of the decade or of the century. And so we're going to have to figure that out. So that's where finance is obviously going to be pretty critical to understand that, to make sure we get that right. So unfortunately for you, it's going to be a little bit more of a reacting to what people are bringing to you and then figuring that out. But that's what I would expect going forward. Any other comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Trustee Malani.
You called out some interesting kind of weaknesses and some opportunities for growth. You mentioned the document management system, the inefficient onboarding and offboarding and knowledge sharing. Those are all things that we kind of identified when we were talking from the IT perspective as well. It's like we're starting off with human capital management. That's kind of like the foundation of onboarding and offboarding, but maybe there's ways we can make that more efficient and help you guys onboard and offboard your employees more efficiently, but along with that, find some way to do some knowledge capturing, so it could be like a single version of the truth. Here's our procedures, here's how I did my job. Now I'm moving on, you're taking over. Now here's my run book on how to do things. So, those are things that we mentioned when we were having our conversation. So it's not just your department, it's something that we see across the board, so.
Right, and those are things that we contemplate and we look at, and as we are training new folks now, we try to, if we do a Zoom session, we try to record it, so it's there for posterity, and if the next person needs to know that information, then it's there and it's available. The challenge with that is, currently, is we don't have a system to house that and to make it readily accessible. You gotta know where it's at and know how to find it and that type of thing, so.
Yeah, unfortunately, with some of the other projects we have going on, that becomes less of a priority. However, it was one of the things that we were looking at over the next few years that, these are some opportunities for growth and things we can do to make things more efficient, so.
Mr. Chairman?
Trustee Compass.
So, spoiler alert, you're about to hear the same. As far as the knowledge silos are concerned, I think there's as we were looking at each of these departments, we're looking singularly focused at the departments, understandably. I think there's going to be some things that maybe on the lower part of the list, but are true across the village, George. So I think we want to look at holistically across the board where there's opportunities to maybe share investments across departments to improve these areas.
Or share efficiencies.
That too.
I think one of those is coming up.
All right. Development Services has a combo of new staff with fresh perspective and longer-term staff that's open to change, and we are all involved in a process reevaluation to make our processes more efficient and effective. Weaknesses, although there is limited institutional knowledge, our strengths will enable us to overcome our cumbersome land development code and overly customized processes. Opportunities, the training investment is big here, and supporting leadership, productivity, and et cetera types of training. And we've made significant investments in customer service and process improvement training. Lessons learned, primarily from our Lean Enterprise Institute process, looking at the efficiencies of our department. Recent updates to how inspections have been performed have uncovered additional opportunities to improve service delivery and customer communication. That process that we're going through right now is segueing into the new investment in technology. The Tyler systems that we're transitioning to. The village has also invested in updated IT systems and other potential add-on modules which may be leveraged to improve work quality and knowledge capture for permits, licensing, et cetera. We see the threats are kind of beyond village borders. The state and economy and market influences, it's impacting business development challenges and attracting the best businesses for our community. And then also resource pools, like the staffing exodus has depleted qualified candidate pools and may require additional short-term outsourcing. We do have some of that limited currently, but we may need to require additional outsourcing if unmanaged. Attrition also increases. All right. The incremental revisions of the land development code, this is kind of a big slide from my perspective. While the full code should be reviewed and simplified wherever possible, an analysis should be conducted to prioritize plan and roadmap rewrites to implement the most impactful changes first. And the size of the code, if I brought the printed copy, would be about 4 inches thick. Presents day-to-day challenges for both staff and the public, and even just interpreting some of the regulations, and sometimes we occasionally find conflicting regulations. So time will be needed to proactively allocate, if not also outsource, to address this challenge. And possible early changes include revamping the entitlement process for special use permits and site plans so that it does not discourage economic development and would encourage petitioners to, request what's per code instead of requesting variations or modifications. Removing the codifications of the procedures and processes to allow for improvements and flexibility by staff within the spirit and intent of the Land Development Code. And then also reviewing land use lists in the zoning districts to standardize use categories and add paths to by right development. So not every development proposal would have to go through the Plan Commission and the Village Board, as long as we have enough regulations and expectations in place where we could do that more administratively. Improved communications, mostly consistency in language and timeliness in our code. An updated communications program would provide clearer expectations of both the petitioner and the staff, better use of technology solutions, including our new petition tracking system, also known as the Tyler IT investment, and then also improved consistency in responses through frequently asked questions and other informational materials. And then improved knowledge capture. The department has undergone significant restructuring, and also we've experienced a loss of institutional knowledge. Although it reduces efficiency, more cross-training is needed to provide backup when staff needs to be out of the office. New and existing tools could be explored to capture the facts around the decision-making processes. We've also conducted some staff clinics and would like to continue to do so in the future to review processes such as zoning, annual renewals, licensing renewals, et cetera. And we would also like to have clearer, consolidated code language and removal of contradicting codes, and with the effective dissemination of this to both staff and the public. So that is it for us.
I guess, so I appreciate that. I would say for sure, and with the board's agreement, I think the Land Development Code revamp, we should just get started on, because I think it's been long overdue and it's going to help efficiencies. So we should just start that process. We don't need to wait for the strategic planning to complete to get that going. And then the other thing I would say that we should look at as an opportunity is how we can streamline our timeline with our developers as much as possible. And I think it ties to your communication, because I think it's making sure that the developers know exactly what, and I realize it's not always us. It's often that the developers as well not providing the information, but if they give us everything, that we hit the timelines we say, and we meet that, because time is money to them. And that's going to help us with our economic development. Let's face it, you're absolutely right. The state's the biggest impediment we have, and we should do everything we can to not be an additional impediment. Any other comments? Thank you very much. What do we got left?
IT.
IT? I would say HR and communications, again, is mostly internal. So actually, all three of them are internal. Yeah, we could potentially at the next meeting wrap up all four of those at the next meeting. Does that work? There was a lot there tonight. The good news going forward, there won't be as much from Public Works, because we basically took it all the way to the end for you. So now everyone can kind of see what you're looking to do. Our next thing actually with Public Works is to assess all of these things and get the dollar value. So that's kind of your next thing, is to structure these, and for all the departments today, is to structure those opportunities that you have, try and address the threats and the weaknesses, and come up with some actionable, strategic options that you can evaluate. And I think that's kind of the next step. Does the board have anything for what Public Works was evaluating at all? I know you didn't have any comments at the time. I just want to make sure. Okay. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Oh, any non-scheduled citizens or visitors to speak on the agenda items on the COW? Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Trustee Compass.
I move to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Call the roll.
Trustee Con.
Aye.
Trustee Katsinas.
Aye.
Trustee Healy.
Aye.
Trustee Malani.
Aye.
Trustee Reardon.
Aye.
Trustee Radiszewski.
Aye.
Mayor Picon.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned. We'll reconvene at 7:15. Give it about a 10-minute break from the last meeting.